And we're live. Welcome to Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and thank you so much for joining us for a unique podcast community where we explore the triumphs and challenges of the performing arts world as seen through the eyes of distinguished colleagues. And thank you so much for helping our community grow. We just hit 2,536 subscribers today. We owe that to people like you who help us, who like our videos and hit that subscribe button. So thank you so much. We have a wonderful show for you today. We have two of my real dear friends and artistic collaborators. We have Bob Cohen, composer, Robert Cohen, and we have Ronald Cadmus. So we have a composer and we have a librettist/poet. And welcome.
Hello, good to be with you,
Great
Jason.
to be with you today, yes.
Why don't we review? We had Bob, you've been on the show before, but why don't we review a bit about your work as a composer, and then we'll talk about Ronald's work as a librettist and author.
Well, I've written a number of different styles in different areas. My main focus these days has been on choral music, but I also write chamber music. I've written for orchestra. I worked in the theater for many years. I had a show off Broadway, and my focus is both in the secular and the sacred area. But I'm always attracted to great text, and which is why I work with this man. And I like working with living people because I love the collaboration.
It's something about setting a fresh text that must be completely unique.
Yeah, and there's so many texts that have been set many, many times over, and not that there are some great settings of Emily Dickinson poems, but how many Emily Dickinson poems can you set? And to me, it's just, I like the idea of a contemporary perspective on things. And I think so much of what's happening today is very much focused on the contemporary world. And so if you want to focus on that, I'd rather work with somebody who's alive and who can mold the piece in terms of what both of us envision, rather than just somebody handing me a text and saying, oh, here's the text, that's it. And I go, and our collaboration is very much a collaboration.
I love that. And Ronald, tell us about your creativity and your artistic life.
Well, my artistic life began very early. I mean, right through elementary school. One of my favorite classes in elementary school was my art class. And so I was motivated to move in the direction of pursuing art. I majored in art at Arts High School in Newark, where I was raised. And so I learned after moving my life in response to my faith journey to pursue a career in ministry. I began painting with words and eventually found myself in my ministry in the life of the church as a pulpit orator. And so through the spoken word and public speaking and the combination of artistic imagination, I began painting with words, of course, and I still do today. And when I met Bob, it was through being inspired by a piece of music I just simply heard over the internet. And my tendency always has been, when I'm motivated and inspired by something, such as his work, I pursue an avenue which opened up a contact. And I was bold enough to write to Bob and say, boy, this work really inspires me. I think the piece was Sleep, Little Babe.
Sleep, Little Baby, Sleep.
Sleep, Little Baby, Sleep. And
I've done that piece several times. My choirs absolutely love it wherever we program it.
And I said to him at that first introduction on the internet, are you open to collaborating? He said, oh, sure. And so I sent him a piece and it went from there. And I think we're at number 48 from what I counted recently in the works that we've done together.
Well, it was a little different. He sent me this email and he says, I'm a poet and I'd like you. And my first reaction was, how do I say interesting in a different way? But then he sent me this piece called God's Whisper, which is now, we've changed the title to Hope's Whisper, which is absolutely, and I was just blown away by the text. And I said, oh my God, this guy really is a poet. And that's how it started. And it was just out of the blue. And it's been just the most incredible collaboration. You know, it's you don't often find people that you can work with that well. And you know, in every collaboration, there has to be give and take, and so sometimes, I mean, we've had I can't write this, I can't, you write it, and then I say, this doesn't work with the music, I'm giving up, I'm going to become a plumber, you know, and then somehow we work our way through it, and I think that our work is very good. I mean, I would, you know, I think our work is as good as anybody's out there in terms of the choral music collaboration and making a statement.
I'd have to agree. I've gotten to see most of it, and I've performed at quite a fair number of it, and it's always interesting, and it always brings, like, I can see both of you in this work, which is fascinating to me as a conductor, to see both of your personalities in the works.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges that comes along with, you know, with when art form, where both art forms are validated but equally important? It's such a challenge.
Well, I operate from this from the get-go with Bob. When I write my words and I want to pass it to him for consideration, I do with a release in mind. I bring my life and my gift to my words to share with someone like Bob, who's a collaborator, and I release it and I give it to him with no expectations or requirements that I want it to sound like this, or I want you to shape it in this way, or I hear this or I hear that. I think you would agree with me.
Yeah.
I relinquish it to his gifts, because as I give him my gift, he gives me his gift. And the two come together and really produce something quite extraordinary. There are times where we have those, and I mentioned this thought to him just a few minutes ago. Oscar and Rogers and Hammerstein, confrontational. Their arguments they had over words and lyrics constantly, and I think that only happens with the two of us when I'm frustrated and I can't come up with it. And he says, I want it to go this way. And I'll go, why don't you try it and see if you can remedy it? And he said, come on, you've said that so many times, play with it a little bit more. And I do. And together, you know, we produce a really wonderful experience.
You certainly mentioned Rogers and Hammerstein, but there's so many in the opera world. You've got the Ponte Mozart, and you've got some of the Verdi collaborators. It's really challenging to find good combinations of.
And I try, you know, what I try to do is find a focus within the poem he gives me, you know, because I think visually. I mean, everybody asks me, how do you wake up in the morning with a melody? And God, I wish I did. I don't. Unless I'm thinking in terms of a visual or a story, that's what I have to write to. I would never wake up thinking of music. I have to always have another thing. And so when I receive something from him, I try to find, a hook in the lyrics, something that gives me a sense of what this really is about, and digging into that. And once that happens, then things start flowing a little better. And then I think what happens is that then he'll have more focus in terms of how we can mold us to work as a whole. And sometimes I have to adjust the music. Sometimes you have to adjust the text, and that's part of the collaboration.
And you've written pieces from just short anthems to full multi-length pieces. What's the longest piece you've collaborated on so far?
Well, I think Genesis is, and two of the movements were actually with another lyricist, and then he wrote three more, and that's 40 minutes in length, and that I think is our masterpiece. And I mean, he did such unique things with it. The second movement, which is always my favorite, which is called The Garden of Green Leaves, which is about the story of the Garden of Eden. It's for soloists and chorus, and the soloist, it's all written from the point of view of Satan, of the serpent, and he's pissed. And the key to it was the word. He wrote this text, and when he wrote the text, he has this line where the where the serpent says adoration. And I said, oh my God, that's the focus of this. Because I thought to myself, and I'm not a biblical scholar, but I'm thinking to myself, what's the point of Eden? What's the point of that story? Why does the serpent do it? Well, he does it because he's not getting adoration. God creates this beautiful man. He creates this beautiful woman. He creates this beautiful garden. And what's in it for the serpent? And so that became the focus of the text. And what he did was so brilliant. The same with the last movement, which is the Tower of Babel. He did it from the point of view of the workers. So the whole thing starts with them laying the bricks to build the tower. And then God comes in and says, not on my watch. But see, that's what I love about what he does, is because he takes, even when he's doing sacred works, he takes a point of view that hasn't been taken before, like our Advent piece. It's about waiting for Jesus to come. It's about the wait. It's not just taking a piece of religious text and laying out there. It has a point of view, and I just love that.
Yeah, the gift of Advent waiting.
Yeah.
It's a great work being performed this December in Edinburgh. So
that's really fascinating. So your work is being done all over the world, right? You've seen it in performances in England, I remember recently, China. What's it like to see your music being performed in different places for both of you?
It's really exciting, we have, in fact, they're doing Sunburst from the Celestial Trilogy. The treble version is being done by the Berlin Philharmonic Children's Chorus in 2 weeks. It's great, sometimes it's funny because when you have other languages, it can be rather interesting. What does it feel like for you?
Well, it's certainly very humbling. And I'm sitting there in the choir loft of Gloucester Cathedral, watching the boys' choir and adults together singing this work, and moved to tears as I'm listening to my gift and Bob's gift being lifted up here in this major cathedral. The event was hosted by the Duke and Duchess. And so to be at a reception following that evensong evening, with great humility, standing in front of royalty who were so appreciative of our work. And we were told how to address royalty when
they were let in with a man with a scepter.
Yeah, it was quite amazing. And when it came to us greeting them, and before we were able to, the Duke was so moved by the experience himself, he just looked at the two of us, and before even the shaking of the hand, he stood in front of us and simply went. He bowed to us. So it was just so moving. And but I also took another opportunity. There was a young kid, 14 years old. Albert is his name. He was playing at the reception. He's a young protege in the cathedral. And he caught my attention. And I just paused to watch him. And after he took a break, I went over to him, introduced myself, and he was thrilled to meet us. But as a result of that sharing with this young 14-year-old, just brilliance and artistic ability at that age at the keyboard, I said, I have an idea, Albert. And he said, what's that? I said, do you compose? He said, well, I try. And I said, I want you to do me a favor. Write a hymn for me, a hymn tune. And I'll take that and I'll write the lyrics for it. And I'll give it to Bob and we'll arrange it. That all has happened. It's now in the hands of Adrian, who is the choral director there. And they're publishing this piece to go to all cathedral boys choirs for evensong presentation. So as I reached out to Bob, with that first song I heard of his all those years back, we continue to do that with young proteges like Albert in the cathedral in England. So
you can never tell. You can never tell where these things go and how a collaboration born in New Jersey gets taken all over the world.
And it goes, I'll have to share that piece with you.
Yeah, and sometimes it's very funny. So, for example, we have a piece called Spirit of the Winding Water, which was it was inspired by Navajo themes. It's not specifically Navajo music, but it was inspired by that, and the text is very evocative. And it's published by Hal Leonard, but we've had some problems because we're not Native American, right? So a couple of years ago, I get this email from a woman who's performed many of our works, the head of the Hong Kong Children's Choir. And she said, I went to your website, I heard this wonderful piece. She says, it's so Chinese. I said, really? She says, yeah, it's very Chinese. And she says, do you mind if we translate it into no, not Mandarin. What's the other Chinese? In any case, and they translated and they did it at the Beijing Choral Festival.
Oh.
And everybody said, oh, it's very Chinese. And meanwhile, it was based on Navajo. So you just never know when these things.
Tonic melodies, I just saw.
Cantonese. Yeah, Cantonese was translated to Cantonese because that's what they speak in Hong Kong. But I thought
at its very best, music can break down those boundaries. And if they find meaning in the music, I think that's what makes it so special, right?
Yeah.
What does it take for a text to be musical? Ask you both.
Oh boy, that's a good question. I mean, well,
a lot of my text doesn't find its form in just a meter rhyme. A lot of it is a prose that tells a story, and Bob does exquisite interpretations of storyline as well as rhyme. If I present that type of work to him. But his brilliance as a writer of theater music comes into play. The other brilliance of his symphonic, cinematic nature really excites me because he underscores my sense in my writings, some of them, of a spiritual nature. He pulls into it his Judeo-Christian understanding of our spiritual connection, as well as our musical alignment. It just all comes into play. And when it's shaped and appears finished, it, for me, is always, if I can say it, God design. And I see that played out. Even if it's in a secular context of a lyric about just being aware of the beauty of life. And as it was with this recent one, the Oregon theme is just exploding with images of nature.
Yeah.
But for me, it also, the underlining emotion for me is the beauty of
the creation of God's creation. Yeah.
And so that is never separated from my thought of writing. It always has a spiritual underpinning, a soulful philosophy.
But it's the story. I mean, so it's not like he gives me typical stanzas.
Right.
I mean, he can, but most of the time the lyric he'll give me is a poem. It's more like, open structure, more through composed. And so I have to find a structure within that. Sometimes it's fairly obvious, and other times it's difficult. The one we just completed was a rather long poem. So I divided into 4 sections. And then I ended it the way I began it. Very ethereally, but there's some amazing textual elements in there, some images that are just breathtaking. And when I see those, then I think musically. So, I mean, I think what happens is that because he's a poet, he's a poet more than a lyricist. I mean, what he writes has a lot more depth than I think many of the lyrics that I've seen other composers said or that I've said in the past, which are easier to set but don't have the depth of understanding or the or the more universal quality to them. Because what he writes has a very strong universal quality that about nature, about creation, about faith, about the beauty, and also political, as in the piece that you're doing, truth be told. And it was very funny because when I first got that, I said, wow, this is great. I think the first time he gave it to me, it wasn't quite right. And then he rewrote it and it was like great.
Let's delve into truth be told. We'll start with the it's always interesting the situation that brings a piece to life. This is kind of a different one because it's actually it comes from an artist named Robert Shetterly who has over 280 portraits of Americans who tell the truth. And this series of paintings travels all over. It goes from it's been in 37 states up to now, and it's got Americans from the earliest colonial days until living ones. So deceased Americans, and the journey is Americans who tell the truth through their life's work, through activism, through imagination. And Robert has painted them, and that 50 of those paintings are coming to Seton Hall. And my college is doing a thing called One College, One Exhibition. And I'd like to shout out to my dean, Brian Crable, Dr. Brian Crable, who has brought this to Seton Hall. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we can do a musical rendition based on that? We had a meeting in June or early, well, I think it was late May, early June, and you guys wrote the piece so quickly. I was stunned. How did it come together so quickly?
I think once he got the hook, which is truth be told, I was actually what happened is I was really pissed off that morning at something I read on the news, and
these days never.
And I sat down at the piano, I started pounding at the piano, and what happened is as I was pounding, I said, "This is what the piece has to be like." But then I came up with the idea of setting it in an unusual meter, and it turns out that it fit the text exactly. It's in 5/4, which is not what most people write in, but to me that was sort of like a breakthrough, because writing it in 5/4 gave it this unstable feeling. And to me, the whole point of the poem is about the instability of lies. And then we work together to structure the things so that the first part is about the chorus telling us that they believe in truth and they want to tell the truth. The second part is a number of the things that are important to do in truth to help the earth. And then the last part is the chorus is turning to the audiences. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I kept thinking of that wonderful scene in The Untouchables where Sean Connery is shot, he's dying, and Kevin Costner leans down him and he grabs him by the face. He said, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And I said, that's really what truth is about. Somebody's got to tell it, and we tried not to make it political. I don't think it's relevant whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or Republican. Truth is truth, and if we are to survive, that has to survive with us.
I'll read you just the two opening verses.
Please do.
We see the world through our eyes. We feel its needs through our hearts to tell the truth of what we see, not just what we think or perceive. Encourage others to choose, to lend their voice, to show they care. And now, as advocates of truth, our honesty we declare. We are citizens engaged, hurt by lies and injustice. We are citizens enraged by the social ills we face. We won't be easily assuaged, won't be sedated by indifference. And now, as advocates of truth, we tell it like it is. And so with those portraits that we're going to look at Seton Hall, in the context of these words that you asked us to write for your group, I mean, those coming together, those art images of those individuals with the words that help support, and they're not confrontational at all. They're just confirming our desire to stand in the center of truth as we see it and perceive it.
It's very powerful, and we've been rehearsing it for a while now and getting it ready for the premiere on October 8th. It's gonna be wonderful to put together, and the students are resonating with the text quite a lot. They're resonating text, and the music is, yeah, the mixed meter has been really great for get us to count and really dig into that, and, it's been such a it's a pleasure to watch something. I love working with living composers and librettists because to watch things come to life is so special. To see, from its inception, from the beginning to getting the words for the first time, and then Bob putting together music so quickly, it really I was shocked how fast the piece was in my mailbox. It was really surprising.
And I struggle all the time. You should
We struggle together,
We
but
struggle
boy,
together. Yeah.
what a challenge this
Yeah.
request was from you.
Yeah, it was,
And,
and the
Are
time
most of your
of it,
commissions are most of the commissions specific commissions for an event like this, or are they more general? What's
it
has
depends,
most
but I think most are. I like specificity. I mean, I prefer if someone tell me what they want versus saying, "Oh, just write a piece." So I would say, I mean, the last three commissions have all been very specific, and that gives you guidance. It also, I think it also gives you a certain amount of freedom because it allows you to look at a subject and find your own voice in that subject, which is what I think Ron did brilliantly here. I mean, just the words "truth be told." I mean, the chorus here: "Truth be told, truth be bold. Let us be courageous, fearless, and strong. Truth be told, truth be bold. Nothing can really change until we speak the truth." You can't argue with that. You can't argue with that statement. And, to be allowed to be given the guidance to do something that gives us an opportunity to be that powerful is what makes, a commission attractive. Versus someone saying, "Oh, just write us something."
something about nature, something so broadly,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I mean, the thing about nature, what was interesting about the Oregon Commission is that it was about nature, but they also wanted something that was referenced to Oregon, although we don't use the word Oregon. We have one reference, Crater Lake, which is a place in Oregon, but that could be anywhere because there's tons of crater lakes around the country. But everything else is more generalized. But Ron researched that area, and in his research, that triggered
Yeah.
him coming up with the text. So by being driven to that particular area, that made it, much more, specific.
give a shout out to I have members of the Putnam Chorale watching, and they're very excited. They just
Oh,
mentioned
okay.
someone on the chat mentioned that we're premiering. We're doing some of your works coming up in December, so they were
Yes.
very excited to meet you both in advance.
Wow,
Oh, well, great.
great.
Look forward to seeing them too.
Yeah.
They're digging into the Serenity of Snow, which is I believe a
Oh,
premiere. So we're very
Gorgeous
excited.
piece.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
Great.
gorgeous poem.
Jason, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you. I spoke in a very small congregation in South River Reformed Church. And I was there a couple of Sundays. In the fellowship hour, I would hang around with the people in the fellowship hall, in and out of the kitchen, getting coffee and stuff like that. And there was an elderly man, he was just cleaning up in the kitchen. So he pulled me to the side at the table. I was on my way back into the group of people, and he said, "Can I speak with you a second?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Well," and he started to say, he said, "You really paint with words." And I so appreciated that. But another man joined the conversation and said to him, "Joe, why don't you tell Ron what you did with all of your life?" And he said, "No, I don't want to bother him with that." So I said, "What, Joe? What did you do?" And he just didn't want to go there. So he paused for a while, went back to cleaning up, and then he said something else again about my words. And his friend there, another member of the church, said, "Come on, Joe, tell him what you did." He said, "All right." So he turned to me and he said, "Did you ever, he must know Norman Rockwell?" So I said, "Oh, of course." And I said, "Why do you mention him?" And he goes, "Because I was his apprentice." My mouth dropped. And I said to him, "No wonder you said I paint with words, because you paint with paint, I paint with words. That conversation resulted in me going to his art studio to see all of the stuff he's done with Saturday Evening Post, all of his artwork for Boy Scouts of America. And I said, I can't believe it. And he was showing me all of his paintings on the walls in his house. And I'm sitting at his, with all of his paint surrounding him, and all of his brushes are there. I said, could you do me a favor? And he said, what do you want me to do? And I said, you have so many brushes there. Can you give me about a half a dozen of them? He said, why do you want them? I said, I want to put them on my desk where I write to make sure I always remember what you said to me today, that you paint with paints and I paint with words. And I have those 6 brushes set right next to where I write every day, remembering that man, the apprentice, now an elderly man of Norman Rockwell, inspiring me to do what I do. And that's what this collaborator does with me. Inspires me to do what I do.
It just goes to show how a simple conversation or a simple email to someone you've never met who you're inspired by can open the doors to things you'd never imagined.
Now, as a conductor, Lee, I have a question for you. We're going to interview you now. When you're addressing a new work versus, let's say, the Messiah, what goes through your mind in terms of, there is a difference in terms of how you're going to address it as a conductor?
Absolutely. Well, I need an Ouija board to actually address some of the issues with the handle. So, in the case of a living people, it's I can ask questions, I can reach out, I can say, oh, that's very interesting. So it gives you more avenues to explore. For me, it starts with the words. I read the text first. I just late at night I do my score study. I'll start with the text. And then I'll go through the harmonies and just kind of see, what makes the piece tick, find my in, as it were. Every piece, it could be a rhythmic in, it could be a repetitive figure that keeps coming back, and then I think about how to rehearse it, and then you come up with your interpretation of it. But it's fascinating. Every piece is different, especially with modern composers, because there's so many ways to approach a piece or approach the text. But once you've done a composer's work, like Verdi, for example, I've done most of the Verdi operas. I can kind of sit down and I know kind of what to expect. But with new composers, I have to sit down with fresh eyes and and it's fun. It's like a puzzle.
Because I'm very much, as we talked about earlier, very much about collaboration, and so I kind of feel that once the work is written, it's now in the conductor's hands. And I always say, if he screws it up, then it's his fault, and if he does something brilliant, I'll incorporate it and claim credit for it. But I always like to see what somebody will do, because sometimes people will do something. I mean, even, for example, in the last movement of the Celestial Trilogy, at the end, when we had the first performance of that last movement, the conductor just held it forever, and I said, that's the way it should be. I'm so glad I thought of it.
It takes different artists to make things come to life. It's the words on the paper, the music on the paper, and then you mix it with the live people in the room. The conductor is the person who knows that ensemble and takes this music and is the bridge between the two,
Right.
and then the audience. And it's always intimidating. It's exciting and intimidating having my friends who are composers or people I know who are in the audience watching a piece that you're putting. But it's quite exciting to watch that process.
We're very fortunate to have someone like you who has been a great supporter of our work and has performed our work many times.
And you're a brilliant maestro, just to watch you conduct. I mean, the command from your podium and your not just your enthusiasm, your passion is very evident. And
It's always bringing people, new pieces to, I think, is so important, whether it's in the church or whether it's in a college setting or an educational setting. It's just so important that we hear new voices constantly, because if it's always the same pieces, it loses some of the spark. And
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to be around this podcast. I've had so many different composers and made connections with, but I just love the personalities of the artists. You can't get that from the dead ones. You know, you can somewhat, but by reading their writings, but to actually talk to people, to have lunch together, you really learn a lot about the music too.
Sure.
And some of the dead ones you don't want to have conversations with. It was funny when I was in, I don't know if you did, one of the houses that Beethoven stayed in Vienna. I was in there, and it was just one floor basically. It was just a small apartment. But at the end of the tour, there was a framed quote, and it was a quote from Nietzsche, and I don't remember the exact words in German, but basically it translated as "brilliant composer, crappy person."
Well, sometimes you respect the artist and not the person. That's the case with a lot of people like Wagner, and you have to take the good with the bad, and you kind of musical genius. And Wagner's a great case because he when he wrote The Ring, he wrote to one of his friends and said, "I've written the greatest piece of literature ever written."
Really?
Yeah.
He thought pretty highly of all of his skill sets.
You think? Yeah.
Shakespeare, those guys are pretty good too. But the
Yeah.
greatest piece of literature ever written.
Ever written? Really?
Well, my mind just went to Anne Frank when I visited that home in Amsterdam, where she was hidden out there during that Holocaust time. And walking through that sacred, quiet space, up the stairs, into the hidden rooms, and then going into that room where all of the interpretations of her famous work, the Anne Frank story, is on display there. And on the way out the door to exit that floor, there's a portrait of her famous portrait. And it just said these words underneath it: "Someday I hope to be a famous author." She wrote, those were her words. And I just touched that. And I left quietly in that sacred mood. And I've never forgotten that statement of "someday I hope to be." We're constantly striving, all of us, we're hoping to be people who through our words are living our life, our heart, our attitudes of grace, compassion, justice, music, joy, sorrow, all of those things together that have shaped our world that we perceive has its fruition someday in the lives of other people who we touch through your conducting, through your composition, through my words, and through our sharing.
We want to move people in some way. That's always been my catchphrase. I want to move people. I want a reaction. I want people to feel something from what we do. I think that regardless of what area of the arts is your specialty, I think that's what art is about. It's about reaching inside people and giving them a reality that they may not experience during their ordinary life.
You think about how tough things are these days and how challenging the news is day to day. People need that to be moved. They need to be touched. They need to be to reaffirm our common humanity. And I think the arts is one of the ways we can bridge that gap.
Yes. That art, like the serenity of snow, brings peace into our soul. And, that's what your choir will be singing about in December. And I'm glad that we're a part of that peace through their voices.
They've enjoyed, they don't know your music at all, Bob. And I've been telling them, and they've been kind of doing the research. A couple of them, I guess, are on this podcast, listening to the podcast. And, the music's challenging and they're having a great time. Like the chords are interesting. The structure is just unique, but it's so much fun for them too, to take this journey to learn new composers, learn new art. And, it's what makes life exciting for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to thank you both for being here and for wishing you both continued artistic success, both individually and together. And I look forward to seeing you both soon.
Okay. Bye, everybody. See you.
Take care. Thank you for joining us on Music Matters. Wishing you all the best. And remember, please subscribe and hit that like button. And I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.